it happens because there were lots of little issues that never got dealt with. There probably
Sure.
was communication issues and other
Yeah.
problems that
Yeah.
came first.
And that's why 65% of divorces cite communication as the issue. Hey, thanks for checking out the episode. Today we're going to talk about communication, which is a very broad, generic topic, right? Like we were just talking about that in the kitchen. But I think there's a lot that we can get into in terms of the goal for today would be how you go from like frustration about communication to connection.
Yes.
Right. Communication styles, I think maybe like to ground the episode on that, that's going to be a big part of what we talk about here today. And any thoughts on that, like right off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, like you and I were just talking about, I think learning how your partner communicates and then learning to respect and value their style versus trying to get it to reflect yours is a really big thing. And that learning that requires talking and communicating. So I think that could be some of the frustration for some couples is they don't actually talk at all. There is no communication. I think that there's either bad communication or no communication. And so either of those is a big issue.
Too, we always talk before the episode and
We communicate.
yeah, we communicate about the communication episode, but I think communication is either a label, a catch-all, call it whatever you want, but it oftentimes like, oh, well, what's wrong in your marriage? Oh, we don't communicate. Why'd you get divorced? Oh, communication. It becomes a label oftentimes in terms of like causes for divorce. So here's a UK study found that communication problems were the most common cause of divorce at 65%.
That's crazy.
So 65% of divorcees claim that communication was the root cause.
And I would guess they would say, oh, we just can't communicate. So I feel like that's the way it's said.
Right.
But it's such a broad thing.
Right. 30% financial, just for what it's worth, 30% financial. This was interesting. Less than 15% of divorces, according to this study, claimed infidelity.
Wow.
And I think that's interesting for two reasons, like we were talking about earlier. I think a lot of people probably assume that someone cheated, or that's one of the assumptions you can make when you learn of someone getting divorced is, you know, maybe there's an affair. According to the study, less than 15% claim that. But I think to your point, you can go ahead and share on that. Like it catches a lot of what issues, challenges.
And I think it's more little things over time that don't get addressed and resolved are the problem versus one big event. Even when there is infidelity, unless you're dealing with like sexual addiction, which is it's not very common, but that happens.
Different topic, yeah.
When there's an affair, it happens because there were lots of little issues that never got dealt with. It's not like you're happy and really thriving in your marriage and then all of a sudden you're like, I think I'll have an affair. Like that's not. So I would even argue that when there's an affair, that's not the sole reason for divorce. There probably was communication issues and other problems that came first. Anyway, side note, but
no, I agree. I
that was like
agree.
the final event that killed it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for like why we're coming at this topic the way that we are. I think communication styles, the way you listen, the way you hear things that your partner is saying.
You have to learn each other's style and respect it. Like I think of us, you're not as much of a talker as me, but you're a really good listener. And so I talk a lot more than you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think I talk to you like a lot. I talk a lot because when I'm at work, all I do is really listen. And, you know, with therapy, the therapist is not supposed to be talking the majority of the time. And it's never about me. I'm just listening to other people. And, you know, so when I'm with you, I want to talk about like a million things. And so there have been times where I expect that you're supposed to be like me. And when you don't say as much as I think you should, it's like, well, what's wrong? Why are you not saying more? And the truth is you're like, well, that's all I have to say about it.
Or I can't listen as long as you would like.
Yeah, that's another. I mean, you love everything I say. I know that.
But no, I know what you mean. Yeah, I agree.
Just not expecting you to to be like me.
And I think, but don't you think that that's taken time to build? I mean, we've been married for 14 years. Like, that's taken a while to get to that point. And yeah, we could sit here and just share a lot about us and our communication styles and how our habits and listening has changed over the years, like issues and arguments that we've had over little things and over big things. But one of the things that I like, and you just talked about little things erode over time, your marriage, or they turn into big things. And I think the reality is, and what I'm hearing you say even earlier is, you can't have a thriving marriage if you're not communicating. And that's why 65% of divorces cite communication as the issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think if every time you communicate, it turns into conflict, big problem. Or if you just don't talk at all, and crazy, but I've heard that from so many people. Like, we don't talk, which
like
is
literally?
Insane. Literally, they'll say, we do not talk. Or they'll go days where they literally do not speak to each other. And I'm like, how can you have any kind of connection or closeness or intimacy when you don't talk?
Right.
So it's like one of those two. When we talk, it turns into something bad, or we just don't talk.
We don't talk. Yeah.
Or I think maybe I'm thinking of a third. You only talk about like necessary things. Like, oh, who are you picking up the kids from school?
Yeah.
Or, oh, what are we eating for dinner? Or do you need anything at the grocery store? And that's it.
I like that you just said that, because we have here in our notes, like, many couples think they communicate, but in reality, they're just exchanging facts.
Ugh.
I like that. I think that was the kids, bills, schedules, to your point. What are we going to eat? What time do we need to leave? What time? When is church? How much time do I have to get ready? Like, you're just exchanging, you're talking logistics. It's like a work conversation, not deep, not personal, definitely not fun.
Doesn't that even go right back to what we talked about in the last episode about friendship?
Yeah.
Like, would you ever have a friend who you like to be around, who you just talk about facts with? That'd be the worst friendship.
An excellent plug for listening to the friendship episode if you've not done that.
Yeah,
well
it's
said.
Good. It's a good one.
Well, here's a good one. So we threw out the divorce statistic earlier. Among partners that described each other as good listeners, 63% had thriving relationships. And the study went on to say how that then breeds into intimacy, better sexual connection, like all kinds of things. So 63%, when one spouse described their partner as a good listener, 63% of those people claim to have thriving relationships. So I think, like the case is pretty rock solid in terms of, like, you have to focus on this and you have to talk about it. And before we wrap up the episode here in a little while, we're going to give, like, our homework for today has a lot to do with communicating about the way you communicate. Like, it sounds so silly to say it that way, but that you have to do that. And maybe, like, an example you shared about, like, your need to talk and me listening. I think for me, like, that's been an evolving, like, work in progress for me, and I even learning the way you're going to portray how I speak. Like, if I'm quiet, it doesn't mean something's wrong. And that's been something, like, I think a lot of men can relate to that, and probably some women too, but it's just like me, like, maybe withdrawing or not speaking as much, like, it could indicate that I'm just processing some things and I just need to be kind of left to it. But yeah, I mean, I think we're constantly, like, we're human beings. We're always learning about each other. And I would also mention, sorry, I know I'm cutting you off, but
That's a bad communication.
It is. Yeah, issue. Terrible. I would also say, like, we change as people over time too. Like, that's just coming to me right now in the moment. Like, when we were in our late 20s and we were newly married, maybe, not yet having kids, and even raising young kids, compared to now, like, we've both changed so much, even in the way that we speak to each other and the way we listen. And
and so that's making me think of one very critical thing about communication is to pay attention to your bad habits and to be open with each other about things that bother you during communication, and make the intentional effort to change those things. Your communication improves. And I think of, like, early on, I used to interrupt you a lot. not to talk about something I wanted. Like I wasn't changing the subject, but I would just like.
Early on or a couple weeks ago?
Still, I'm working on it. But
Just
you're
kidding.
gracious. Thank you.
Go ahead.
But anyways, I would interrupt you because I thought it's like I knew what you were going to say and I'm like finishing your sentences. And a lot of the times you're like, that's not what it was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, please. But I don't do that nearly as much because you told me, hey, I don't like when you interrupt and say and like think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I heard you and I thought, okay, I don't like that I do that either. So I need to pay attention and be aware. Hello, that's like the main thing. Self-awareness and a willingness to work on things in all areas, including communication. But if I didn't listen to you and I just kept doing it, eventually, and this is what happens a lot, you just wouldn't want to talk to me anymore because it would get annoying.
Yeah,
and that's what happens to a lot of couples.
But don't you think too, like back to the point I was making about like changes over time, it's not just dropping bad habits. It's just natural, like we change as people over the course of our lives. And I don't even mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying like evolving in terms of our careers and our lifestyle and raising children, like that all changes people a little bit. That I think it's like if you're grounded, I guess the point I'm trying to make is to your point, if you're really grounded on like your love for one another, your friendship, your connection, like a lot of things that maybe we won't go into on this episode, and you're focused on your communication and it's open communication, and we have it in here. I'm just looking out of the corner of my eye. Communication is not a personality trait. It's a skill that you grow into and are constantly evolving. Like you were saying, dropping the bad habits, evolving in the way that you speak to one another and how you listen, how you resolve conflict. Like, I think it's this kind of like a journey that you're on with your spouse, right?
Yeah. And it gets easier when you put in the effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and that takes me to a thought of like, what do you communicate about? I think there's like a wide range of things. And I mean, honestly, I would say everything, but that could be fun, silly things, deep, meaningful things, things you're excited about, and then really difficult things, hard conversations that are not necessarily conflict. They're just uncomfortable. So yeah, sometimes you have to talk through hard things. And what I found is if we did that really early on, like uncomfortable, awkward conversations, you're like, okay. Like you do it anyway. You push through. And I think a lot of couples, they're 20 years in and there's things they've never talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
And so they avoid it.
Right. And then
you have
eventually
to do it.
Takes its toll.
Yeah. You just have to do it because one partner desperately wants to have those conversations. And if the other one doesn't, you're left with nothing. Because again, if you don't talk, you don't have a relationship.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. So maybe just to pivot, because I like that you talked about unpacking. I mean, you kind of alluded to it, like unpacking things, tough conversations. Let's talk a little bit. I want to hit maybe like culture plus like the way you grew up, like the impacts. I guess where I'm going with that comment is the impacts to the way you communicate that you either observe in culture, in society, or from your upbringing. So I think just to hit a couple like hardcore stereotypes that I can even remember, like thinking back on childhood, whether it's shows or things on TV, is, you know, you've got the nagging wife and the silent husband or the dumb husband, right? Like these are stereotypes and that content is like so good too. You see shows like continuing to be pumped out that like fit that narrative of exactly what I just said. Like a wife who is maybe overbearing, or she's perceived as the like intelligent, demeaning one to her husband who's maybe funny but stupid.
Yeah. But the problem with those stereotypes is, let's say in real life, you have a wife who's frustrated and wants to get a point across, and she's trying desperately with a husband who's not really hearing her, and he just said, "Oh, you're just nagging me."
Right.
Which is like, no, that's not true. I'm trying to communicate something.
Yeah.
And you are not listening because you have this stereotype that if a wife brings up a difficult thing, she's just a nagging wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, and that can go either way, to your point about if there's a husband who maybe he needs time to process and he doesn't want to talk right away, or he needs to think it through, that could fall on that other side too of like, well, you just don't like to talk.
Right.
Maybe he just needs more time.
There's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom in silence as well. So I think, yeah, you're right. So and then you have like the TV couples that bicker,
put each other down.
Yeah, put each other
which
down.
Is not okay.
I mean, yeah, we won't get into that too much. But what, I guess this is the question for the listeners. Like, what did you grow up seeing? That's the question here. Whether, again, we just mentioned a couple things about, TV shows, but what did you grow up observing? How did that maybe shape the way you communicate or stereotypes that you hold? And did your parents talk about things? Did they avoid conflict? To your point, did they just not speak? They never had conflict. Well, that's because they never talked to each other. Did they yell? Did they stay silent? Like the whole host of things,
Were they
right?
kind to each other? Did they pick on and put each other down?
Yeah.
Or like super sarcastic? That can get really annoying. That's like an annoying way of communicating.
For sure.
And can turn disrespectful.
Yeah.
If you don't chill out. Like sometimes it's okay, but not if it's all the time.
Right.
So
I think even as
that's okay.
So I think even as we're talking about this and as you're listening, think through like, okay, I'm sure things are immediately coming to your mind that you observed when you were growing up. The next thing would be, do you then expect your spouse to know those things about you without saying it? And I think you brought up a really good point earlier when you talked about like conversations we had when we were first married. Like a lot of that came out with your upbringing and parental styles and different things like that. What that we bring in, and you also said this, which I agree with, is you're bringing that into the marriage, whether you want to or not, whether you willingly choose to or not, it is coming in. You bet. Your best bet is to just lean into it. Don't you agree?
Yeah,
like
you
lean
just
into
say,
it and just get through it.
And you ask yourself, why do I act like that in conversation? Why do I interrupt, or why am I always sarcastic, or why do I feel like I need to put her down or put him down or like belittle what they're saying? What's that about?
Yeah.
It's like just self-awareness. Ask yourself the question. You will get to the right place. Because as you start focusing on it and thinking about it, the things will come to your mind. Like, oh, well, that's because my dad did this or my mom did that, or that's just what I've always done. Does it bother your partner? And do you want that to change? Then you have to change it.
Yeah.
Or else your communication will not improve.
Yeah.
So much of it is learning and developing and changing the way that we do things in healthy ways, not personality. So I think there's a difference of things that can and should change versus, well, that's the way God designed me.
Yeah.
Like there's a balance there. So like, I can't make you get really excitable when you communicate like I do because we're different. Like you're more even keel, like relaxed. I mean, I think the way we watch a football game says everything. You just sit there, chill, no matter what. Like you get excited if they score a touchdown. I'm like jumping around, yelling, getting mad. My kids are like, "Why'd you call him stupid?" I'm sorry, guys. Like, well, but he should have caught that ball. Like it's just really intense. So I think I can work on bad habits that come from the way God made me, as can you, but we can't change each other in that we're different.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I like, well, yeah, and it's a good transition too, because we talked about like you can change this. It's a skill. This is not a personality trait. Like you said, I like that you said it that way. And I'll share an example from that's coming to my mind is you brought up sarcasm, which maybe that was like subtle. But I picked up on it.
Good job.
Like that absolutely 100% has been something, growing up with brothers and friends and whatnot, that like sarcasm is a real way that men communicate with each other, putting each other down in a sarcastic way for laughs. I mean, all the things. And I think like that definitely caused me some challenges. Like it was very unbecoming part of my personality. And I think then bringing that into a marriage, I had to figure out, and I'm still like a work in progress, of course, like we all are, but okay, I don't want to lose that entirely because that is a way that I show humor or whatever. That's, personal to me, but there's a balance to it. And I think for example, if I just kept going like, hey, like, I think this is funny, probably not going to be a good communication style to continue. And then having, children whose personalities are different, like even thinking about that, like one of them might perceive my sarcasm as funny and know that I'm joking, and another one might be really hurt. So Yeah, I don't mean to go long on that
No.
personal example, but it can be changed. And to your point, you got to work on, you have to be self-aware. You got to put in the work. You got to talk about these things with your spouse, and you have to be committed that you can evolve and change it.
I feel like that's such a good example overall, because thinking back when you were super sarcastic, I had to speak up and say, hey, I don't like that. It would even be like moment by moment, because maybe sometimes I don't care. Find it funny. But then other times, whatever it might be about, I would say, hey, could you stop being so sarcastic? I don't like it. And you listened and you apologized. I'm sorry, you're right. And I think another thing with you is like tone. You might be saying something I need to hear, but it's like the way you're saying it.
For
Or
sure.
like, I even remember early on when we would have some conversations, because you're just super logical and direct, you would like talk in a certain way. And it wasn't even like we were having a problem. We were just communicating about something. And I remember saying to you, I feel like you're talking to me like I'm a colleague that you work with. And I don't like that. Could
I
you just
remember
be
that.
a little bit more like warm, like I'm your wife? And you were like, oh my gosh,
A
you're
little more
right.
real.
And you stopped doing it because you listened. But the point is, I had to say, I don't like this respectfully. You had to listen, and then you had to work on it.
Yeah,
And
be
our
receptive to it.
communication improved. So there's so many aspects to it.
Yeah.
Speak up, share what you like or don't like about communication and how it's going. And then on the flip side, when your partner shares with you, listen and do something about it.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So I love
that's
that
good.
example you brought up.
Well, let's move into like what it requires. So, and this isn't like a get well plan either. This is like just
It's
everyday
complex.
marriage life.
I think communication is very complex, and I think a lot of people will want like, here's 3 steps to perfect everything. Like do this, this, and that. But everyone's so unique and different. It's just a very complex like situation. So you're not going to get that like quick bullet point. So we're just kind of giving the things that we have seen that help us but there's a lot more to it, I'm sure, than we're even touching on.
Well, and I think, no, that's a good point. And I think back to where we started, like communication's a catch-all. Like we could only have a communication podcast realistically. Like I think there's so much content to talk about this, and every single thing in your marriage, sex, finances, raising kids, career, navigating career choices, conflict resolution, like all of it has elements of communication in it.
Yep.
So I'm being sensitive to, like we are being sensitive to that fact that like we're not trying to like
we're not going to get it all in on one
hit everything
episode
here.
Yeah.
I think in terms of what does it require to have like good communication that builds that connection instead of tears down. I think a couple things that come to mind, like make sure your motives are pure when you're sharing with each other or just having conversations. This is a big one, and I would say like we've talked about this a lot. Your partner's not your enemy.
Yep.
Maybe just a reminder of that.
Okay.
Always make it your goal to understand what your partner's trying to say. No, but I think that is really true. Like, and by the way, like that was methodical to put motives pure and then your partner's not your enemy, because maybe they are. Like that's not lost like on us as we're making this episode. Like you could be in a spot where you are absolutely like enemies with your spouse right now. And like no sweat, like we're confident that you can rebuild that. So hang in there. But I think if your motives are pure, you both want what's best for each other. You have to remember, even if you're having a tough conversation, even if tempers are hot and you're having conflict, like your partner's not against you. Maybe it feels that way in the moment, but you know.
And that can be. I think we're just speaking to the people who you're both on each other's side.
Yeah.
There are obviously really serious situations where there's abuse going on, and I don't think most podcasts or books are going to help you in that. I think you just need to get help, like get real help and get out of there. So that's just our perspective on that. But I think don't be so selfish and focus on yourself. I think what comes to my mind when I reflect on people that I did not like to communicate with, whether it's friends or just people are people who only talk about themselves and they don't ask you any questions and they don't seem to care about anything in your life. And when you start talking, they look at their phone or they check out. To me, that is like the worst communication style and habit that there can be. And I know you agree because I'm sure you're thinking of people. You see them coming and you're like, oh my gosh, don't come talk to me, because you know they're going to talk for about 2 hours and not care at all about anything about you. That happens in marriage too. So be interested in your partner. Be curious about your partner's life.
Yeah.
Ask your partner questions too.
Yeah.
Like
No,
it
you're
needs to
hitting
be a mutual
good stuff.
interest in each other's lives.
Make it a goal to understand what they're saying, what they care about, their interests. Yeah, that's good. And ask clarifying questions. I know we had that in our notes. You just said that. I think intentionality too, like making actual space to talk is big.
That's
and we
so
talked
good.
about that a lot in the friendship episode. So another plug for that one that we just dropped fairly recently.
Well, and you would put this in our notes, like to make intentional time, not just when you're exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you were saying
No,
that.
and I think in that episode, though, we talked about the balance between like spontaneous, like enjoying your life together. That obviously needs to happen. But then you also do need to make sure that you're being intentional with like, time to talk.
Well, so, with intentionality, you just said it, like the spontaneous versus planned. That could be one of you saying, hey, I'd like to talk about XYZ. I'd like to talk about our budget and our finances. Can we find a time this week to discuss? Or, hey, I'd like to talk more about our sexual intimacy. Can we find time to talk about it? Like, make it a goal to bring it up and then plan it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you and I, so we communicate and talk every single day. I don't think there's ever a day that we don't sit and talk.
Yeah.
If there's something difficult, we talk about it as soon as we can. I think that's a big thing to do. When there's a hard conversation, you need to have it as soon as you're both ready.
Right.
Which if one of you's avoidant, that might take a while. So you need to just force yourself to communicate about it.
Yeah. Agree.
And then doing lighthearted, fun things opens the door for communication that's fun and lighthearted. If you don't do those things, you're not going to have those conversations.
I mean, don't you think, maybe just to share like our practice, and I've heard a couple different things, like the 15 minutes when you both get together for the first time in the day, like if that's around dinner time, that's like a critical period of time. I would argue like, and what's been best for us is when the kids are all like finally, which the bedtime keeps getting later and later, but once they're finally like, you're done, there's that time. And if you each need like 5-10 minutes to decompress, like, okay, fine, of course, I'm not trying to be like fanatical about this, but I think that has been, to your point that you made a minute ago about we do this every day, that's when we do it every day. Like our schedules are as crazy and busy as everyone else's, from 6 a.m. until sometimes 9 o'clock at night when the kids are finally, asleep for the night. But I think whatever the time is, you got to find it. And I think for us, and probably for a lot of like young families, it is when the kids are in bed and you've got that quiet, the house is quiet at the end of the day. So I like that you said that, because that's the time for both having fun, for having serious conversations, for laughing together, for obviously building intimacy. Like you got to find that natural space every day, or as frequently as you can get it, and really make the most of it.
And I think when there's friendship, it's a lot easier to communicate.
Right.
So that's a big priority.
All right, well, we'll move into the homework for the episode. And if you've listened to our podcast before, you know that we always leave some kind of a charge or an action step for you to take in your marriage before we end the episode. So the ask would be, each of you really like assess your communication privately. Like, what do you do well? What are the gaps? What are the goals that you have for your marriage here? Like anything else you want to add to that too, but really assess individually again, what are the skills you want to develop? What are the things and habits maybe about your communication, either yours or your partner's, that you don't like? And then when you're ready, like set aside time to really talk about it. I think it's really like the homework's that simple. For this time is really talk about your communication. And like we joked earlier, communicate about your communication. Like, yes, that's literally what we're saying.
I would add too, reflect Are there things that your partner has already told you that they don't like about the way you communicate? And be honest with yourself. Have you been actively working on it or not? And then this is hard, but you can even ask, hey, how do you think I'm doing with listening? Do you feel heard? Do you feel like I care about your life? Is there anything that you would like me to do differently in communication? And then don't get too offended. Like, hear it, take it, put in the action steps to make the change. And I get it. That's hard for me because sometimes when you express, and that's something too, when you have a complaint, don't attack or criticize. Just, hey, here's something that's been bothering me when we communicate. I feel like, and that's where the I statements comes in. I feel like you're not really listening, or you forget things that I've told you, and I wonder if you're not paying attention, and can we talk about it? Like, be gentle in your approach versus attacking.
Yeah.
When that
that's you mean even in regard to this conversation?
Yeah.
Well, just to summarize quickly, like we talked at the front about how communication is a main reason people get divorced. We also talked about statistics that if your partner's a good listener, it increases intimacy and connection. Good communication doesn't just happen on its own, but it is a skill you can develop. You got to put in the work. We hope that you'll take advantage of the homework. And thanks for checking out the episode this week. Please do subscribe and leave a review if you could. It really helps us grow. And have a great week.